Welcome. Thank you for joining us to learn more about the Incidents Against Immigrants in Libraries Reporting Form, a project of the SRIDP. SRIDP stands for Services to Immigrants, Refugees, and Displaced Persons, and is a subcommittee of ODLOS, the Office of Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services with ALA. Today you'll be hearing from Derek Wilmot Montoya, Haley Park, and myself, Lana Vines. We are all current members of SRIDP. The SRIDP mission and goals are listed below. Our mission is to promote equitable library services and access to information for refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers, and displaced populations. Our goals are to support access to information, education, technology, and community resources for all people. We develop toolkits, guidelines, and best practices for libraries serving international populations. And we foster partnerships with organizations that support newcomers. Some of our current ongoing projects include Celebrating Welcoming Week, a guide for libraries. This is a programming guide with ideas for both public and academic libraries to celebrate Welcoming Week. We also coordinate the Libraries Respond page listed on the ALA website. This includes a list of resources created in response to legislative changes that have introduced uncertainty regarding their impact. And what you will hear about today is Incidents Against Immigrants in Libraries Reporting Form. This form is designed to track incidents against immigrants in libraries across the nation, both public and academic. To tell us more about it is Derek.
Thank you. I'm going to cover the form itself. Up to this point, our work is centered on developing and publishing the Welcome Week Toolkit for libraries and other resources relevant to libraries that support our immigrant communities, as my colleague Lana mentioned. Here we'll take a deep dive into the why, what, and who of the Incidents Against Immigrants in Libraries reporting form. Why did we take on this project? What steps did we take to complete this project? And who this form is ultimately for. Next slide. We have witnessed a surge in incidents against immigrants across the United States, mainly through enforcement by ICE and U.S. Border Patrol, who are charged with the apprehension, detention, and forced removal of immigrants in the United States at the behest of the current presidential administration. These incidents are difficult to identify because they are not unified, comprehensive lists that track library activities. There are organizations like the Rapid Response Networks and others that attempt to make a safe and welcoming place for everyone. And then there are apps like ICE trackers that are available for people to use, including the ICE Raid and Deportation Tracker, among others. However, many of the reported activities are based on eyewitness accounts and media reports. These often do not help library workers understand the scope of these and other actions occurring in libraries, nor do they explicitly identify the immigration status of those being detained. Next slide. Worse than that, these activities feed into the mass fear and xenophobia generated by sensationalizing this systemic harassment and threats against librarians, library staff, and their services for the immigrant community they support. This includes libraries of all types, whether public and school libraries, providing resources and services to new Americans, other immigrants, and the children of immigrants, or academic libraries that are providing related services to international students and faculty. Some of these threats take the form of censoring materials and shuttering programs, supporting immigrant communities of all types. There are also reports of property damage and other forms of vandalism occurring in and around libraries. Examples of this can be seen in places like the public library in Evanston, Illinois, where someone defaced the inside pages of the book titled The Quran for Dummies by a person who wrote lies cover to cover and inscribed a swastika and added a disparaging remark about the Prophet Muhammad in the book. Another incident occurred at the University of New Mexico in 2016, where a student was studying when she was approached by a man who tried to forcibly remove her hijab. And in December 2025, the New York Police Department investigated racist, anti-Indian, anti-Black, and anti-Semitic graffiti at the Dibner Library at New York University Tandon School for Engineering. Much of this comes from lingering historic discrimination, and marginalization of immigrants in libraries. While these types of incidents have been happening from the earliest days of our republic, we are now seeing a spike in those types of incidents. In part, this creates a continual practice of othering people because of who they are, where they come from, how they worship, their accents, and even down to their cultural legacies and how they dress. Because they can sound, look, or even think differently, they're easy to scapegoat. We're hearing these concerns from librarians everywhere, both within and outside the American Library Association. Our committee therefore concluded that we needed to develop a forum for gathering this information, a forum that librarians, library staff, and community members can self-report incidents of all types that occur against immigrants and the resources and services libraries provide for these communities. Next slide. Librarians and library staff have responded by documenting their concerns and providing guidance through programs like Know Your Rights and Theirs for possible ICE raids and arrests in their libraries. As an example, since 2016, the Brooklyn, New York Public Library has displayed plain English posters and handed out palm cards that provide information on who to contact if a family member is detained, where to find emergency legal assistance, and what to do in case of an outstanding deportation order. In 2025, the Seattle Public Library, like other libraries, provided guidance to its staff on how to respond should ICE enter its libraries to protect library workers and, to some degree, their community members. February 2026, shortly after the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preedy by the U.S. Border Patrol and ICE agents, public library directors shared tips for dealing with the federal immigration activity. Their webinar, Responding to ICE at the Library, Real-World Approaches, addressed many of the concerns of library workers. This webinar is available free of charge to any ALA member through the Public Library Association for those who are interested in viewing it. Links are provided along with other important resources at the end of this presentation. The webinar is also available through ALA e-learning site under the same name. All this indicates that the ALA Services, Refugees, Immigrants, and Displaced Persons Subcommittee needs to collect information on incidents against immigrants in libraries. Next slide. Up to this point, we touched briefly on how censorship and book libraries are a way some groups have attempted to undermine the library resources and services provided to immigrants. We're working in collaboration with members of the LENA project to review data collected by the Office of Intellectual Freedom, focusing on book challenges related to the histories of people of color and first-generation immigrants. This information provides a baseline for the types of data collected through the OIF and the types of groups that are making these book challenges and other forms of censorship for libraries by extremist groups. Groups like the Citizens Defending Freedom, Parents' Rights and Education, and the Moms for Liberty, just to name a few. These organizations lobby federal, state, and local governments, including local school, city, and county boards, to remove bilingual books, literature addressing immigration, and other works by immigrant and first-generation authors, as well as those based on race, gender, religious, or philosophical beliefs and sexual orientation. Often they label these books as politically motivated or inappropriate for the public. Next slide. And then to reiterate, many of the incidents being documented are based on the presence of ICE entering our library buildings, creating an environment of fear, discouraging community members from entering and using these public spaces. And as we've seen reported in the media, it doesn't matter what a person's immigration status is. People have been detained and removed without due cause from library premises. ICE has even conducted surveillance and demanded library patron information with the intent to create confusion and fear. The main problem facing libraries is that they're not explicitly categorized as protected areas in many places across the country. And with that, it creates a very confusing environment for library workers to navigate. We all know that incidents involving immigrants are occurring more frequently in libraries, especially within the last 2 years. Intimidation tactics by ICE and Border Patrol agents to extremist groups challenging and banning library books and library programming and services and vandalism by individuals and others are the main reason why this forum is needed. We need to track what is happening to immigrants and new Americans in our libraries to better understand the types of incidents, where they are occurring, and their frequency. This will guide the committee with reporting and developing resources on these incidents and to better equip librarians with the knowledge they need to effectively respond in their libraries. So now let's turn to the form itself. Here, we'll go ahead to the form. As you can see from the form, it talks about incidents against immigrants in libraries and the libraries initiative itself. It's an and the definition of what that is. An anti-immigrant incident is any biased action based on a person's or group's actual or perceived nationality, country of origin, or use citizenship, non-citizenship. These incidents are antithetical to the library's profession's stated values. In Article 5 of the Library Bill of Rights, which states a person's right to use a library should not be denied or abridged because of origin, age, background, or views. Why report these incidents against immigrants in libraries? Reporting incidents is vital to developing the resources to better understand and redress the challenges impacting the immigrant communities we serve by libraries and related information institutions. We have an option to report. You have the option to report anonymously. Your incident report will be kept confidential, and all accounts are reported in aggregate. The information gathered from these reports helps ALA and the SRIDP to stay aware of developments in the profession, supply library workers with crucial tools, resources, and workshops and programs, compile data and trend reports for the public awareness. And as you can see further on down, this report allows you to report for any incidents involving library materials or space. And we ask that you please consider submitting an Office of Intellectual Freedom reporting form for things that are beyond the scope of this particular form itself. Scrolling a little bit further down, you can see that you can report on behalf of yourself or someone else, describe who was involved in the anti-immigrant incident, and in your own words, tell us what happened. You can also describe, did the incident get resolved? If yes, how it was resolved. And then when did the incident occur? Other aspects you can include are what are some supports or resources that you wish you had navigated in this incident, and then whether or not you're willing to share what your reactions are to the incident and the resolution of that incident. Finally, it also includes an area where you can select whether this incident involved law enforcement, and if you select the yes or no, a second line will be created to indicate whether you're willing to share any more detail about the type of law enforcement that responded to the incident. And then at the end, we ask that you provide us with contact information follow-up, that allows us to have a better understanding of where in the United States that this occurred, and then whether or not you would like to take part in a follow-up interview. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to our colleague Haley.
Thank you, Lana and Derek, for the introduction and then very thorough background. So from here, I'll share updates on the research aspect of this project. The metadata project was inspired by the American Library Association's United Against the Book Bans campaign that a lot of us are already familiar with. Our goal here is to document incidents affecting immigrant communities in libraries and then create a mechanism for collecting and analyzing those incidents. We've heard about these incidents happening here and there, and then currently we don't have a repository that's gonna help us assess the current state of things accurately. So this is one way that we are trying to address that knowledge gap. As part of this effort, we collaborated with the ALA Office for Intellectual Freedom to obtain data, and Eric was very instrumental and helpful with giving us the data. And then it was about challenged and banned books that may have been relevant to immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and undocumented individuals and displaced populations. As Derek mentioned earlier, this work is part of the LINA project, which stands for Libraries, Integration, and New Americans, based at the University of Maryland College of Information. I am a member of the research team, which is led by Dr. Anna Ndumu. To better understand the scope of these challenges, the Office for Intellectual Freedom generously provided data covering challenged titles from 2021 through 2024, which formed the basis of our preliminary analysis. And next. In this section, I will share some preliminary findings from our analysis. It is based on the master data set of unique challenged titles. Initially, we only had information about challenged books themselves without any comprehensive metadata. To address this issue, UMD I3R Research Collective Fellow compiled additional metadata for each title in collaboration with the University of Maryland libraries. Using this enriched data set, I identified books relevant to our project by searching for keywords associated with immigration and related topics across multiple metadata fields, which include titles, authors, subjects, descriptions, and language information, among many. Through this process, I identified 231 relevant titles out of approximately 9,000 and more challenged books over the years. The graphs shown here illustrate the distribution of these titles. When organized by audience, the largest number of challenged books are intended for elementary school students, followed by middle school and high school audiences. There are also broader audience categories such as children, juvenile, adults that require additional manual review for better understanding these distinctions. In terms of genre, fiction accounts for the majority of challenged titles, followed by nonfiction, biographies, and graphic novels. However, fiction covers such a wide range of topics and different themes within, so further analysis is needed to better understand these patterns. Next, please. Here, I examine subject classifications using Dewey Decimal System classification system. Among the most frequently challenged subjects, immigration emerged as the dominant theme. Immigration and place-based classifications also appeared prominently. To conduct this analysis, I grouped thousands of Dewey Decimal System subject headings into big categories. So in the graph, the blue bars represent the total number of challenged books within each major category, while the red bar represents the number of subcategories contained within those broader classifications. This provides an initial picture of how immigration-related materials are distributed across subject areas and where challenges are concentrated. And next. So using the similar approach with the Library of Congress subject headings, place-based topics again emerged as the most frequently challenged category, followed by immigration, family, and gender-related subjects. Many of these topics overlap with the broader social and political discussions that have received significant public attention in the recent years. So this suggests that there's a strong level of intersectionality among challenged materials, with immigration often the intersecting factor with identity and family and race and gender. And then even with the place-based categorization, it could be the setting where the story takes place, but also it could be setting of where the immigration-related things happened. So again, like further refinement is needed there. Next slide. So to provide some context, here are some examples of the books that have been challenged. One example here is The Grief Keeper, which was challenged in part because of themes related to deportation. Another one is Front Desk by Kelly Yang, a well-known novel centered on the experiences of a Chinese immigrant family. And then, despite its popularity and critical acclaim, the book has faced the challenges in some communities. Another example included We Are Not From Here, which addresses immigration and displacement. Many of the books in our dataset have received prestigious literary awards and have been widely recognized for their educational value. Yet, despite these accomplishments, they have still become targets of challenges and censorship, highlighting the ongoing tension surrounding immigration-related topics in library collections. Next. So looking ahead, our team will continue to expand and refine the analysis and the bigger scope of the work. We are currently reviewing records manually to improve the quality and then completeness of the metadata. Along with the incident reporting form, we plan to conduct interviews with the library practitioners who have experienced or witnessed the challenges related to immigrant communities and immigrant-focused materials. Ultimately, our goal is to produce a white paper that can be shared broadly with the library community. We hope this work will help us better understand the nature of these incidents, identify emerging patterns, and support collective advocacy efforts on behalf of immigrant communities. So if you are interested in learning more about the project, contributing data, sharing experiences, or helping us better understand incidents occurring in your libraries, we would greatly appreciate your input and collaboration. And then with that, we will move on to some questions.
Okay, at this time, we will review some frequently asked questions. How far back can one report? For example, if the incident took place a while back.
To answer that question, people can report incidents from the past, anytime in the past to the present. We're basically just trying to gather as much information as we possibly can. As long as they're reporting the date and time of the incident and how it took place, it's all relevant information.
Can a video or image be uploaded into the report?
Regarding that question, not at this time, but if there's a need for it, please let us know. In that way, we can incorporate that option later.
What about privacy matters?
Well, we try to keep everything as private as possible. As stated earlier on the report itself, it does indicate that the information is going to be anonymous. Your incident report will be kept confidential and all accounts are reported in the aggregate. So report as much as possible concerning the incident, refrain from using names in there. The data submitted to the report are confidential and maintained by ALA staff and SRIDP community members.
How do we know if the person or persons involved in the incident is an immigrant?
We suggest reporting the incident regardless of whether the immigration status of the person impacted is known or not. Again, going back to our definition, we define anti-immigrant incident as any biased action based on a person's or group's actual or perceived nationality, country of origin, or U.S. citizenship or non-citizenship. So there's any indicator, and then you probably know your community members too. So if there's any indicator that the person or material or even programming have been negatively impacted due to it being perceived as an immigrant, just feel free to report. And then I think that's going to give us more indicator of how these challenges are brought up or incidents are happening. And also consider intersectionality when you're reporting. A lot of incidents may involve immigrant and plus other identity factors. So when in doubt, just fill out the form, and then I think that itself can be a good data.
Will the data collected be shared?
For confidential reasons, data will not be shared with anyone outside of the SRIDP committee, ALA staff, and select researchers. The committee intends to issue an annual report summarizing the data collected.
Should the form also include incidents directed at staff?
Yes, in the form, there's a section to indicate whether the incident was directed at the library staff. You can report it yourself, but if you have also witnessed your colleague being impacted, then you can also report it on behalf of your colleague as well.
When will the form for reporting be available?
The form is actually available now. So please help us share this form through your networks and other places as much as possible. Thank you.
Will the form ask people to differentiate between types of law enforcement agencies engaged in the incident, for example, local police, ICE, or U.S. Border Patrol?
Yes, there's a section on the form to indicate the type of law enforcement that initiated or responded to the incident. And if there's more information you'd like to add, feel free to let us know. In that way, we can also incorporate your input and then also maybe improve the form itself as well.
Thank you for taking the time to learn about the Incidents Against Immigrants in Libraries reporting form. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us using the information on the screen. We also encourage you to share this presentation and the reporting form with your colleagues and professional networks. The more people who know about this resource, the better we can document these incidents, identify trends, and support libraries across the nation. Thank you for your support.